Thank you, Speaker. When I first entered Parliament just under a year ago, I asked the local police in my community what was the biggest issue for them, what was their greatest concern, the issue that took up most of their time. And for some reason I thought it would be car theft or drugs or crime that's very visible, but I was deeply saddened, and I'm getting nods across the chamber here. It was domestic violence. It was, and it still is. So tonight I want to talk about the issue of escalating domestic violence cases in the eastern suburbs, distressing cuts to funding, and some of the brave local women and their supporters who've been speaking out. The New South Wales Women's Safety Commissioner, Dr. Hannah Tonkin, has said, "Domestic, family and sexual violence traumatises individuals, destroys families and undermines our ability to achieve equality in the community. It can be experienced by anyone, regardless of their backgrounds. It affects all groups, demographics, identities and communities." And I want to reiterate that key point, that this is something that can be experienced by any community. Since being elected, I've had the opportunity to sit down with local women, with police, with DV groups, charities and constituents to talk about the prevalence of domestic and family violence in the eastern suburbs, to listen to their stories, to hear more of what needs to be done for our local community. Last week's crime statistics confirm what many have already told me. We have seen a 16.2% increase in domestic violence-related assaults in the eastern suburbs in the last 2 years. Last year alone, there were 778 reported cases of domestic violence in the east, and we all know that plenty more go unreported, and many women self-report to the agencies. In New South Wales, police respond to a call every 4 minutes for domestic and family violence. Now, often statistics like those seem cold, just numbers on a page, but they are sobering statistics, and behind every one of those statistics is the story of an individual. Last Friday, I spoke with 2 of my constituents who had a lived experience with domestic violence. They were strong women, both with children in local schools. They were working hard to rebuild their lives, working to ensure stability, financial security and certainty for themselves and their children, particularly through finding long-term housing. What got to me was just how hard they sought to try to hide their own stress and fear for their situations, and tried to hide that from their children. They did not want their children to worry. They were amazing mums. They are amazing mums. I note that Priority 6 of the New South Wales Women's Safety Commissioner's strategic plan released last week did talk directly to this issue of economic safety and security. It highlighted the reality that DV generates significant financial costs for women and contributes to high levels of financial stress. Often what I've heard in my community is the prevalence of economic abuse as a form of domestic and family violence in the eastern suburbs. Unfortunately, economic abuse remains poorly understood in the community, so I'm so glad that the plan has prioritised it. We know that economic security is a key factor influencing a woman's decision to leave, stay in or return to an abusive relationship. And what has been made clear from my conversations with constituents, women's groups and charities in recent weeks is just how important it is that we have a well-resourced DV service in the eastern suburbs. That is why it was incredibly disappointing that the federal government recently decided to discontinue funding to a DV support charity in the eastern suburbs, the Lahaki Foundation, which currently provides case management support for 35 women and their families. Speaker, the eastern suburbs cannot afford a net loss in funding and services for DV in our community. And today in Parliament, when asked about the cuts to the Lahaki Foundation, the Minister for Domestic and Family Violence Services confirmed, quote, "There is currently no funding available for the Lahaki Foundation." She stated that the clients can be serviced by existing state government funded services, but I know those services are oversupplied. They cannot cope. Our services deserve financial security and stability. A begging bowl approach to DV funding just doesn't work. Speaker, we can't afford to lose more funding as cases are increasing. That maths doesn't work. There are vulnerable women and families who rely on those services, and we cannot let them down.